I guess before we get started, I would just, on behalf of Mr. Iverson, ask that we all take a moment of silence. All right. And I hope, although I probably shouldn't say it out loud, I don't think we'll be here too long, but those are famous last words here and in court. So I think there's, let's see, is it to you next, Dr. Cox?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Spivey. So before you, we have a work session agenda. Also in your folders, you have the business meeting agenda. So we have put this together with Mr. Jones before he went on vacation, and specifically pulled off the things that we thought we needed to talk about during the work session. But if any board member has another issue or has questions about anything that's on the business meeting that's not specific on there, we certainly would be open to questions and provide information at your request. I would just remind everybody that the business meeting is scheduled for June the 8th, and that's 6:30 here in this location. And remind board members that Mrs. Grubb will be here to do pictures at 5:30 that day. So we'll send another reminder. But again, the next time we are scheduled to meet is June the 8th here in this room. The meeting starts at 6:30. Pictures are scheduled for 5:30 with Mrs. Grubb. And so, Mr. Spivey, do you want to
yes,
share that?
That was the other thing.
Dr. Rouse had let us know about something pretty interesting.
And we've all seen our self-portraits, but Dr. Rouse shared that Emmett Elementary, in their yearbook, if anybody wants a good laugh, they have all our portraits in the back, and I'm not sure I would have chosen that one out of the ones for me, but it's a very good drawing, but I look kind of like George Washington, and some other cartoon characters are in here too.
Well, it was very sweet of them to do that.
Yes,
we appreciate it.
They can all still draw better than I ever could.
Of course, that was for board appreciation. The schools do different things, and we were all honored and presented with portraits done by some of our students, and they used those to put in their yearbook. So anyway, we'll just proceed then with the work session agenda. And first up, I'm going to call on Mr. Flannery, who has a brief annual report to share with us about the highlights of this year with our CTE programs. Mr. Flannery.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cox, and good afternoon, board members. I want to take a few minutes here to kind of give you, like Dr. Cox said, the highlights of kind of the State of the Union address for what happened in the CT department this year. I've also emailed you all a copy of this if you'd like to revisit that. I know it's also embedded in the agenda tonight, so feel free to look at that, revisit that later. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out anytime. Let's go and revisit where the programs were at this year. So if you want to, see which program we had at which school, and then also the total number of programs and total number of teachers that we had this year. Looking at CT enrollment, this is broken down by school. The total number of students enrolled in the CT course was over 2,600, which was basically about a 1-to-1 ratio. And I just want you all to know, compare that to like a non-BLA or non-pandemic year, we're really down. Typically, we average over 4,000 students in our classes for the year, but BLA and the pandemic really changed a lot of that. So I do expect us to bounce back next year and be back over that 4,000 number. Number of CT concentrators, we're still pretty close to, we had 642 this year. I just want you all to look at an average year of about 850 to 1,000. The number of students that complete at least 2 of our courses in a sequence. And the reason why that's important to know is because that comes with some funding, and also our state measures, our data and data come from those benchmarks, things like that. So Dual enrollment was still very popular even in the pandemic. I wanted y'all to kind of see the number of students who actually had at least one dual enrollment course this year. So the number of students, 742, took almost 1,300 college courses and earned almost 4,000 college credits just through Northeast State alone. We have several post-secondary partners. And I thought y'all might just want to know what it costs per credit hour, just so you can compare. I put the per credit hour is $212, what it costs for Northeast State in this current year. Number of students that were enrolled with Northeast State, we had 73 students, earned 219 credited hours. And you can see how, we saved those students $420 per credit hour, those families. And I kind of gave you a dual enrollment summary here. Oh, I'm sorry. Dual credit testing, we didn't have as much of that as we've had in the past just because of the pandemic. We typically have a lot more students that participate in dual credit. It is actually the easiest way to earn an EPSO opportunity for a high school student. And it's also free. And the college comes to us. We don't have to send the students anywhere, which is really nice. I do expect to have a real kind of a bounce back year next year when it comes to dual credit. So kind of in summary, basically 809 students, 60% of students are eligible to take a dual enrollment and earned over almost 4,300 college credit hours, which saved our families tuition savings of $917,000 this year. So almost close to $1 million in savings in tuition. ACT trends, I want y'all kind of see where trends are at. We talk about learning loss, and no one's really talked about ACTs much, but it's definitely evident in our students' performance. If you can see up here on the left, I've got 18, 19, the number of students who were scoring 21 or better, and the number of students that were scoring a 30 or better. And then the first year of the pandemic, how that was negatively impacted, and this year it's negatively impacted a lot. So, we've gone from 43, almost 44% with 21s or better down to under a third of our students are scoring a 21 or better. So I just want you to know that learning loss was really evident in the pandemic. This is one thing ACT's not released much information about, the negative growth in scores. So something we need to think about as we're moving forward about learning loss next year, about how do we try to really vamp up ACT prep, things like that to get students back on track. So. Work-based learning took a big hit from the pandemic. We're on pace of doubling our number of work-based learning participants until this pandemic situation. The year before I came in this position, we had 25 students in work-based learning, and then my first year went to 52. Next year went to 125, and we had over 250 signed up for work-based learning this year that, employers didn't want students to come because of the pandemic. So, and it is our goal for next year to be over 250 students in a work-based learning opportunity.
Mr. Flannery?
Yes, sir.
Is that the same as what we called co-op?
Yes, the old co-op, yes, exactly. Mr. Harrison, terminology just changed, same thing. Industry certifications, here's where we're breaking those down. We had 23 students certified themselves in the CCMA, which was brand new to our students this year. We still have 13 do the nursing, the CNAs, and then CPR and OSHA 10, and you can look at those. So we have 126 students that are in industry certs. We still have two students, that are pending the cosmetology licensure exam this summer, because you have to be 18 before you can take the exam, so they're taking it this summer. We still did the billboard celebrations of our early grads, or I should say our college grads, and then our ACT 30+ club. And I'm sure y'all saw graduations of the custom stoles we had for the students who were graduated from college, the Northeast State stoles you saw at the graduation ceremony. Let's say for third year enrolled, Sullivan County has led the area in the most number of college graduates here in high school. So, in our ready grad numbers, we've gone down on that because our ACT scores have gone down. We were very dependent on ACTs of 21 or better to help kind of carry our ready grad rate, and that's came down. But one thing I do want to highlight as a positive is that, Sullivan East has been able to maintain a grade of A for all 3 years, even in the pandemic, and that's the reason because they've really taken industry search to another level than they had in the past and other EPSOs. So I do expect that to kind of bounce back too as we get back to in-person learning and things like that. Just want y'all know a bit where we stood with our equipment, inventory, and assets. We have about $2.5 million, over 1,000 items of inventory just off our federal monies, and with $750,000, over 2,000 items in GP inventories. So our total assets is about $3.2 million, over 3,000 items what we keep up within our department being inventory. The club competition, which y'all are very aware of, we've celebrated students with that, so, you know, we did really well. And I would say, you know, we were the most decorated school system in the state this year. Our robotics competition, we were first in the state with that, with East Middle School, and Miss Trent this past weekend competed in the world event, in which her team got 7th in the world. I did say world, not just nationals. You know, we were competing against students from Australia and China, Germany, and our students. It was nice to hear them say Little Piney Flats, Tennessee, when they would announce it. So kudos to her and her program and her high school students. And then, you know, one thing, when I came in this position, we didn't really have a great website or place to get information. You know, it's just basic knowledge type things in our department. So I thought it'd be interesting to show you all how much people still use websites and other than social media. Just since I've created the CTE website, we have almost 7,000 views. So that means parents and students are looking at it. And then, you know, we've also tried to make a bigger emphasis on our social media presence through Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as well. And teachers and school accounts are up to 11. You know, and that's one thing we're asking as we think about West Ridge, is those teachers this summer start focusing on their social media accounts, so we can start building some excitement about our programs. I shouldn't say build some, we already have excitement. Keep the excitement momentum going. And I just gave an example of how sweet it is our name of our baking and pastry arts program. Wanted to show y'all some of the improvements we had in our department at Sullivan East High School. You know, last year we focused on the interior. This year we focused on the facade and exterior. So we have brand new signage on the outside of the building to show, you know, some people walk up or visitors understand what we're about at this building. We're putting that SC that's painted blue outside the gym. So as you park at the parking lot, you're going to be able to see where you enter the school for basketball games and athletic events. And then some of the things that we did for West Ridge, you know, some of the signage that we're putting up and some of the sculpture that students are building. And just moving forward, next year we're looking at 38 programs, 24 programs at West Ridge, 14 at Sullivan East. And we're adding banking and finance. We're adding marketing and management at East, so I have 2 brand new programs. Then we're adding the baking and pastries, which is the only program in the state. You know, we did a special program, a study request for that, and was granted that program. Hospitality and tourism, banking and finance, aviation flight, and machine tool are going to be new programs at West Ridge. And then I gave you a graphic just in case you're like me, you're a visual learner, you like seeing things in a graphic. And I provided both East and West Ridge, so you have both those copies. And then I want you all to know that we're going to be going from 3 dual enrollment cohort programs to 12. And I provided you with the list of those 12 programs that we're increasing our dual enrollment cohort programs. We're also adding a dual credit test in fire science at East High School. We're adding Walters State as a partner in our post-secondary partnerships. And then just the companies that are willing to do work-based learning and apprenticeships next year, I've listed some, that list is growing. And just saying thank you all for your support, pretty much just saying I can't do it without you. I've never felt like the board didn't support be in this position or any of our teachers, so thank you for that, and I look forward to working with you all in the future. So, and then any contact information for me if you want to reach out to me. Then, basically, any questions you might have about a lot of information on that, I try to keep it under 7 minutes. I was telling my colleagues. Yes, sir.
I wonder if there might be a time when we could get together, maybe the board tour some of the vocational schools. After the last meeting, one of the teachers sent me some of the welding examples that one of his students, I think his name was Justin Little, that had done, which was just amazing. I know a little bit about welding, but I'd like for the board somehow or another to be able to see some of their work. He sent me pictures here on my Facebook of some of this. He even welded tin cans together and done some stainless steel welding. I think that's something we'd like to do sometime, or at least I would, even if we can't do it as a group.
Well, you know, Mr. Hughes, that's a great example and great point to bring up. You know, one thing about a lot of our students and teachers is that our students are competing against students at the national level that get more than twice as much seat time and lab time as our students get. So that's something to keep in mind, and we continue to have talent just like Justin Electrical. That's just an example of one of our students. We have a machine tools student who's going to be going to work with over a $40,000 starting salary. We're going to be celebrating that here shortly. So, you know, there are a lot of great stories out there that I do think we need to share. Any questions for me, for the board? Yes, Mr. Harris.
Couple. One of them, at first you were talking about the losses as far as we went down from usually around 4,000 down to 2,600. in the CTE, was that mostly external or was it internal? It was mostly like Northeast State programs and ETSU, or was it mostly internal?
No, I only gave you numbers of internal courses with those.
Oh, okay.
Such with our own teachers, that would be students who might realize that they were gonna get on-hands learning, so they enrolled in a different course or things like that, or and actually, or went BLA and stayed online. Because BLA ended up being our biggest school this year. So.
Another thing you mentioned was something about a funding, I'm sorry, funding was based on one of the numbers you gave us. Is that one of the things that they've frozen this year, or do you think that's not going to impact?
No, and I think we're gonna see that other districts are gonna have that same negative growth in ACT scores and performance as well, because their students have also suffered like ours have by not being in person and doing their daily. The funding actually is, it's really more of the measure, like where did you score that they're looking for with those concentrators, not really a funding source.
And as far as the ACT scores, I saw the numbers declining, but have we gotten averages as far as how much we've gone down over the system, or is that something we're still waiting on?
Well, what I'll give you is actually a nice, a good reflection of where we're at as a system. That's all 4 high schools, and that's every student that's accounted for in this cohort this year. So that's every single student, so keep that in mind. That's very accurate. I mean, I keep a pretty tight record of our ACT scores. I didn't get that from ACT, that's my own personal record that I keep up with.
Yeah, I just know that every year we look at a grand total of our ACT scores, and I know that trend obviously is on its way down. I just wonder overall what we've done.
Well, I will say that, one thing I didn't show you is that the number of students with the 34 and 35 really have stayed about the same. So our really high achieving students have really stayed about the same. It's kind of that, right hit the 30 tier. We had a lot of students that had 29 this year. So the 30 is kind of the magic number. So.
That was gonna be the same question, Mr. Iverson. I think you answered it before we started to ask it, but how do, it may be that we don't know the answer, we don't have the data, but how does our decline compare to local and state and national declines, across the board on?
Like I said, I've not seen ACT release anything on a national platform, and really the only way to know that, if you're looking at comparable districts, is to reach out to them and ask them for these numbers. The state's not releasing these numbers. I keep up with them so I can do the formulas myself,
Okay.
so, and I don't know, I'd have to reach out to other districts. So it would be nice to know where we stand with comparable districts. And I don't care to do that, Mr. Spivey, if that's a request.
Oh, that would be great. I mean, I would definitely want to know that.
Well, thank you for y'all's time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flannery. Next up, Ms. Rafalowski has some information to share. As you know, she's been working very hard with lots of aspects of our transition, and so she's going to talk to us tonight specifically about the North Campus.
Thank you, Dr. Cox. My topic right now is more or less just a statement of interest for you. On July 1st, which is a Thursday, we will actually be, Mr. Hubbard and myself, walking through North High School, the campus, with Kingsport City officials at that point, and getting ready to transfer that campus. My statement to any of you is, if there's an interest of any board member to join us as we walk through that campus, to please contact me via email or phone, and we'll be happy to include you as we walk through that campus. We're planning it for 8:30 on that Thursday, July 1, and I anticipate it'll take most of the morning. I also anticipate that campus will be completely cleared, and we will be in good shape to take that tour and walk through with Kingsport City officials. I would like to take the opportunity briefly to just say, over the course of this week and last week, as I've been in all the buildings where our teachers and staff have worked very diligently to pack up and get ready to move to different locations, can't begin to tell you the work that's taken place in our school district. I'm very, very proud of our employees, our teachers, our aides, our principals, and our custodians. And Charlie, I don't know how many times I've said to Charlie, I just can't believe the work they're doing. Karen Nave and her team out there this morning it's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of heavy lifting, and it's labor. And they are doing it and doing it very well. And when I may have had some anticipation about all the work that needed to be done in our school district this summer, I'm not worried anymore, because our people are really good and they're getting it done. And I just want you all to know how proud I am of them. And I think you all will be very proud come August 9th. So again, anyone who would be interested in that, it's just a personal thing. If that's something that you want to do, please notify me and we'll make sure that we include you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rafalowski. Okay, continuing, item 4, Mr. Hull is going to talk to us this evening about closing the school and then subsequently the school property, specifically at Bluntville and Colonial Heights. Mr. Hull?
I did want to put these on the agenda just as we consider the disposition of these schools. Bluntville and Colonial Heights, neither one has been declared surplus, or we haven't even gone to that step yet. In talking with Mr. Jones, I think I can say that he is in favor of getting a survey of both of those properties and an appraisal of both of those properties. We are getting a complete title opinion on the Bluntville property, and both of those, as you know, have sort of unique circumstances in terms of their location, and I think it would be at least something to be considered in regard to the appraisal, to have an idea of the uses and the potential value. And that, of course, is up to the board, but I thought we would put that on the agenda, and if you want to proceed on that, you can so vote at the meeting and we'll proceed. I did not feel like it's something that should be done without your approval. It's not exorbitantly expensive, but it's not cheap either. So that was the purpose of putting those on there. You may want to consider that. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Mr. Hall, what does it typically cost to do a survey like that? I mean, I think I remember, but I'm like the rest of the board, I'd like to be reminded. It's around $6,000, $5,000.
No, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, the one we did at Bluff City Middle School was about $4,500. Well, it may have been a little more than that. But that one was very complicated. So I don't think of that as being a good, really a good gauge as to what it is going to cost. So I can get, well, I don't know if I can get estimates or not. You know how people are, but I would think you'd be looking at roughly $3,000 for an appraisal on each of these, and $3 to $5 for a survey.
And the Bluntville property's got 2 components, correct?
It does, and so part of this might be locating those exactly where they are and what they are, and correct. So
I guess what I'm getting at is, if one of those properties don't belong to us and we survey, I mean, how's that gonna work?
Well, that's a good question. I guess we would have the option of only surveying and appraising what is in our name on the deed. Then that would put us in the position of, I guess, if we wanted the whole thing done, to get the cooperation of the commission, and obviously don't know whether they would want to do that or not. So it might be strange to have half of it surveyed and the other half not. So I don't know, I would think there might be something to be said for just doing it all so it'd be done, but.
Well, really, if there's just two components and we do ours, in reality, we now know the remainder, don't we? I mean, if we just done. if
Yeah,
we found-
that's
If we found the
true.
corners, then really
That's true. Not so much on the appraisal, but,
to know where we were.
on the survey, yeah. be- Okay, if there are no more questions on those, on the Bishop property, we have been, given the go-ahead, on the budget to, purchase that, and, as you know, Chris Davis, signs off on all those, and we work with her. And so I have prepared the documentation for that, and she's reviewing that, and as soon as we're all on board, we'll move forward.
Mr. Holt, just, is there anything else that the board needs to do on that? Or is that something that, since we've already voted to do that, that can just be signed by the chair?
I believe that it would just be signed and we're ready to go. Yeah, I think
I thought so
the
too.
board
I just-
has voted on
When you said that, it made me question, so.
it. All right, that's a good question. I talked about it with Mr. Jones, and he and I both are of that opinion.
Any further questions for Mr. Hull on any of those items? Okay, if not, we'll proceed. I'm gonna ask Ms. Deloach, she's got, additional, teacher tenure. We had some extra folks, to recognize the consolidated plan, the differentiated pay plan, and then I'm gonna ask, Ms. Deloach, while you're there, just go ahead and talk about the budget amendment, so we can, take care of all of yours at one time, so.
Sounds great. I'll be quick on the additional teacher tenure. We had two that we missed in the first process, so we need to catch that up and make sure we do that in the June meeting. So those two have qualified for tenure. They are eligible, and I'll ask you for approval on those at the meeting. I heard from one that will be in attendance. The other one I haven't heard back yet from, but I'm sure both of them will be glad to be here.
I just wanna add one thing because
I'm sorry, I just want to add this on because it's in the other agenda, it's not on the work session agenda, but whoever set that up, thank you for letting the 2020 tenure recognition. It's going to be in June.
That was
so-
Ms. King.
So whoever did that, so
Yes.
thank you very much, I appreciate that, it was oversight on our part, but thank you for helping with that.
2020 was a heck of a year, so lots of things got done a little bit differently than before. So I'm sure those people will be very appreciative to be recognized as well. The consolidated plan, there will be and I can't see what you see, so I think you have a copy of the consolidated plan approval, and it has all of the budgets that go with that included in there. So we're gonna ask for your approval on that. The federal funds, that's always changing, we have carryovers that come in, but this is the beginning budgets for that, that's our beginning allocations, and they can adjust either way. So, we're required to have that approved in June, and we ask for your approval on that one. That's our standard consolidated plan, that includes Title I, Title II, Title IV, IDEA and IDEA preschool, and consolidated admin. So all of those are included in that one application. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have on that. All right, moving right along, differentiated pay plan. It's again the month to do that, so that's our differentiated pay plan for 21-22. It's the same pay plan that we had for this current year that we're in. There's no significant changes there.
Just one question on that, it's under the additional instruction roles and responsibilities, is the one where it's given the stipend for the teacher leaders. Is that number pretty much the same, or is that number down with the closing of schools, or where did we go with that?
We left that number the same in case we need it.
Okay.
We've not gotten to that point yet, but we left that number the same. So it could be lower,
Okay,
but it's better to have it there and not need it
Sure.
than to need it and not have it there. So it's left the same.
all right, thank you.
And you'll also see that it reflects the new salary scale for professionals. That includes the 4% on top of the salary equity that we've approved. And that's contingent upon commission approval as well. thing I have is budget amendments, and you have one budget amendment, I believe, for general purpose school fund. That could possibly change, and more than likely will change. We'll be adding those on there, so we are gonna work up to the very last minute on June the 8th to make sure that we've got everything covered. So we're gonna pay out as fast as we can pay out all the bills that we have, and make sure that all of our line items are reorganized and ready to roll. So, you may have some additional amendments. If there's one that involves a salary line item, that has to go to the county commission. So you'll see a resolution on there. The reason you don't have a resolution tonight is we're paying out the stipend, and that stipend comes out of the regular line item, and then we'll reimburse from the CARES money. So there's a little bit of accounting work to do there, and you may see one on the 8th that actually has a resolution to go to the county commission, should we need that. So, that one is not completed yet, and it will be completed on the 8th, I'm sure, and it may be lunchtime on the 8th before we get it done, but we're gonna work to the very last minute to make sure we got it done as good as we can get it. That's our standard cleanup amendments, though.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Deloach? These are, all the items that you just talked about, we'll be asking the board to vote on and approve on June the 8th.
You lost me just for a second. The stipend, where's it coming from? I know it, where are we taking it until the CARES money comes in?
Mike, your microphone.
We're taking them from the regular line item, the regular pay line item.
Okay.
And then we're reimbursing with the money that the state gave us, along with CARES money to cover all the gaps.
And I think you said this, Ms. Deloach, but there's two attachments to the differentiated pay plan, but that salary schedule, it has the increases that we've approved already in it, correct?
Correct, that includes the salary equity for the region, get us that regional average, and it also includes 4% on top of that salary.
So
regional
we,
average.
yeah, so we try to equalize, then we add the 4%.
That's
so
right,
it's-
because if we don't do that, we're going in the wrong direction, because
Right.
more than likely they'll be adding 4% to their salary scales as well.
But that's still gotta be approved by the commission, correct?
That's
Okay, thank you.
I guess I need to clarify, they will approve our budget. They don't technically
Right.
approve what our salary scales are, but they will approve our budget. And if the
Sure.
budget doesn't get approval that's meeting that funding level, then we'll have to look at other areas.
All right.
Any further questions for Mrs. Deloach? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And I'm going to invite Ms. Rafalowski back, and she's going to talk to us about school start and end times, and then drill down just a little bit to talk about staggered start times for West Ridge High School. Thanks.
Can I ask a real quick question, because I had an email sent to me just right before the meeting started, and I apologize for waiting until Mr. Bush is down, but is the American Rescue Plan different than the CARES Act? Because they're talking about funding coming through that now. Is that a different stream or a different thing, or is that actually included in? I apologize for making you off my gut.
Well, it's a great question. It's a
'cause
great
it's-
question.
I think
What I
there's
read's exciting, so it's kind of,
a ton of different plans, and they're all
Okay.
called different things by different people, but we do have a homeless grant that's called the American Rescue Plan.
okay.
And it's for homeless students, and Ms. Akers and Melissa Dotson are working on that, and they're writing that up. So I've heard that buzzword a whole lot. Most of our care, and what we call CARES money, is the same thing as ESSER, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. That's the acronym we use. So, we got a question about that the other day, and I'm a little confused about it too, because I'm not exactly sure when somebody says the American Rescue Plan, exactly what they're talking about. But we do have a piece of that, and that is a grant for homeless students, and it's much smaller than any of the ESSER grants that we've gotten.
Yeah,
The email that I sent, and again, I just got it right before I got here, so it's got that plus several other things. That's what made me wonder if it was like in conjunction with or it is totally separate, but it sounds like it's totally separate from the CARES.
From what I understand, that is a completely separate grant.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead talk a little bit about school start and end times. The first thing that I will draw your attention to is at the bottom of the page, and it's in black and bold, and it says draft. Okay, so this is a draft plan. The plan will not become approved until the Board of Education does take such action. Second thing I want to bring to the forefront, in working through this plan, we actually replayed the board meeting from when this was discussed last. And we tried to accomplish what the board had an interest in as we went through and devised this plan. Let me go through a little bit about the chart. The first column, of course, is the school name. This, as we begin the school year, we will have 15 schools in our school district. We will have 2 high schools, 3 middle schools, with one of those middle schools also housing Innovation Academy, and 10 elementary schools. We are making a very big, drastic change in our school district, and we have many of these charts, and we have some small ones as well. As you leave tonight, if you'll look at this, this is something that we felt was important to put out there so people start seeing how students transition from elementary to middle to high school within our school district and our zone. So many thanks to Amy for designing and for our graphic arts program for printing. I will add that when we have things within our school district that we want to publish or items to get made, we turn to our students many times. They're very, very talented, as Aaron said earlier, and we get quality work from them always. So first column is the school name. Second column is our current school start and end times. The next column is what we are proposing as our school start and end times, and I think as we look at that column, you will see that all 3 middle schools are scheduled for 7:45, which was a point of conversation. The 2 high schools are scheduled for 8 o'clock. And after that, you'll see that most of the elementary schools are somewhere between 8:05 and 8:30. You'll see a little bit of change there, which is, we'll note in another column, but the next column then talks about when the doors open. We open our doors to our buildings 30 minutes before school starts. So that column gives you the time that the doors will open. The next column gives you what the change is from the prior or the current year. And an example there would be the first one on the list, East High School changing from their current 7:35 start time to 8 o'clock is 25 minutes later. The next column you see is the potential for us to add a 30-minute extended day program, which would actually be 30 minutes prior to doors opening for our elementary schools. And you can see the times there that the doors would open. When I talk about a 30-minute before school day extended program, this would be a program that we fund through the CARES Act money that we're looking at. We're looking at the potential that where we would utilize our own teachers in that building and for 30 minutes focus an intensive program on reading, particularly citing learning loss. The next column, there was a question, several questions at the last board meeting. Do we have before school programs? Do we have after school programs? We've included 2 columns there, and currently in our schools we have no before school programs. The only before school activity that we have is when our doors open 30 minutes before school starts. You can see that after school varies from school to school, and we've noted those in that column just for your information. With moving start times later, it may take away the need for some after-school care for some parents, But those programs will still be in existence. We haven't heard anything different there. That gives you some information there. I hope that's all that, I know it's a lot of information, but I hope we filled in all the blanks. If you'll turn your page over, you'll see that we have, we want to propose a West Ridge staggered start time. And this staggered start time will not vary from the start and end times of the days, but it'll be a staggered start for days. We're looking at a school, a brand new school, that's going to be brand new to over 1,900 students and over 150 staff. We will have several things.
I got none on the back.
You got the lucky copy, so you get the door prize.
Thank you.
Dr. Cox, you did bring the door prize, right?
I sure did.
Okay. Paul, see Dr. Cox after the meeting. Sorry, David. Again, this is what we're terming a staggered start. Looking forward, we know that we're going to have a lot of new experiences for a lot of people. This, by the very least, does not, we're looking at our transportation. We're looking at familiarizing our students with the building that they aren't accustomed to, have never really been into. And we're also looking at serving lunch. Lots of different news for lots of different people. Our proposal would be that on Monday, August the 9th, that juniors and seniors attend. Tuesday, August the 10th, we bring in our freshmen and our sophomores. Again, on Wednesday, we bring our seniors and juniors back in, and on Thursday, our freshmen and sophomores, and then on Friday, we bring all students in. We're hoping that after 4 days, we will have our transportation well in place. If we see things that we need to change as to how parents drop off, buses drop off, how we stack cars on the campus, we hope to have some indication as to what the traffic flow will be like during that time. But rather than bring every student in on the first day of school, it just makes sense to us that we take some time to work with our students, to blend our new families together, and that we give them an opportunity to learn what this building is about, as well as what's available on the campus. We hope to take them to the football stadium and show them the tennis courts and where things are located. We need to talk to them about where they park. How they enter the building. Students that are parking and driving will enter the building from one side. Bus riders will enter the building on the other side. I can just go on and on about all the reasons that I think, or that we think, we need to do this. So I've presented you with two things here this evening. One being the proposal for school start and end times, and the other being a proposal for the staggered start. And this will be an action item at the next board meeting. I hope to answer any of your questions or concerns in regard to either of those, as well as if you have additional suggestions or things that you think we need to look further at, we're happy to do that as well. The staff spent a considerable amount of time on this. We looked at Google Maps, we looked at several things, we mapped out the time between start and end times for the schools that would be utilizing the same buses. And we think it works. But we have had to back up and pump before. And if we need to do that, we will. So, thank you.
Ms. Rafalowski, I just want to say, I don't know who birthed this idea, But kudos to the person who birthed it, whomever it was. And then.
It's always a team effort.
And then I was going to say, and thank you for that team that worked on that, because I think this is a brilliant idea, for lots of reasons. At the high school level, you're having those freshman meetings, those sophomore meetings, those junior meetings, those senior meetings, because every one of those, groups of people need to be told a whole different bunch of information. So you're making this so that that's gonna be easily accomplished. And then also the fact that they're now going to be able to have an opportunity to truly look at their new high school and figure it out, without the stress of 1,900 people being there. So I think this is a brilliant idea.
And thank you, and, with these two groups, we should be about, 900 to 1,000. It works out really well. Our sophomore class and our senior class are our two largest classes at West Ridge, both being over 500. So we like taking the opportunity to work through the daily, mechanics of school, and we think this will help us. This is a new ballgame for us. We've never had a school this size, and so we want to get it right, and hopefully this will help.
And as we all know, the devil is in the details.
Absolutely.
So if we can work out the details, or the devil, whichever, then it will be smoother from then on. So good job, team.
Thank you.
The only question I have, and I'm sure you've looked into this, average daily attendance won't be impacted by half the students being out on 2 days that first week. Does that clock not start for some time?
It does start, and we will ask for permission for this once the board passes this. And it could be that the state comes back and says you've got to make up 2 days. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I want to test it out here before I go any further.
Thank you.
I do love the idea. I think it's a great idea because it's gonna be an interesting start. So I think it's a great idea. The only thing I would make a suggestion, or just ask if you actually thought about the suggestion. The way that the two groups are now, it's basically all of the car drivers are one and all of the drop-offs are another, which means it would really stress the parking areas more. Wouldn't it be better to have like a break in that, like a senior freshman or something, so it's not completely all the drivers versus all the drop-offs? Just thinking.
And I appreciate that. One thing that we thought about is we did like the idea of having all the drivers at the same time, because it shows us what the parking lot is gonna look like. And, you know, how many drivers are we gonna have at the beginning of school? Making sure, you know, we know how many parking spots we have for students, and we know how many parking spots we have for staff. We wanna make sure, so if we're splitting them up in 2 different days, we won't really get a good indication of that until Friday. And that's why we like having all the car drivers at one time.
I'm glad you thought it through then, thanks.
Thank you.
Only other question I have is on the other side, when we're talking about the early start, the learning loss thing, it's, again, I love the idea of that learning loss thing. If the way I'm looking at it, right, the doors open 30 minutes early normally, and then we're looking at 30 minutes before that for the learning loss, does that mean the learning loss will be the full hour? Or does that mean the learning loss is gonna be like a half-hour segment, or is it just some version of that?
It would only be a 30-minute segment, because we still wanna make sure our students get breakfast
Okay.
and have that time.
Good.
And that's an important piece for us. I think the disadvantage for us on that 30-minute piece, and we don't have this figured out, I don't know that we will get it figured out, for the entire 30 minutes, is our bus riders won't get to take full advantage of that. And that's a concern that we have, because we don't wanna leave anyone out. So that's something that, you know, it may be that they come in 15 minutes, or they come in that kind of thing, but this is not a time where we want to look at math, science, or social studies. This is strictly reading. And some days it may be a teacher reading to students and just asking asking probing questions. It will vary. We will lean heavily on our teachers as we work through this. We're looking, and what I want to start encouraging is that we're not looking at these times as a remedial type activity, but we're looking at them as a means to accelerate learning. And how do we push that forward and take that negativity away from what remediation might look like, but what acceleration could look like, and be positive about it. So, but that would be a part that we would work through with the CARES money and evaluate it, of course, at the end of the year to see if we're, we feel like that's a good means for expenditure.
I noticed the first day of operation at the middle school, we had a disproportionate amount of car riders. How will that translate to the high school, or will it? Have you thought of it?
With the beginning of the school year, it doesn't matter where you go to school. There's going to be more car riders than there's going to be in 2 weeks. I think we all know that. When we did when we opened Ketron after the remodel and some school closures there, I can remember being down there and having to double stack cars on the track because we had so many car drivers. We will have the same situation at West Ridge, much like what we had at East Middle. That first day of school, that first week, we will have more car riders than we will anything. We're gonna have a lot of curiosity about this campus. We hope that we have the ability to have many open houses, many tours in the month of July. It's gonna be late July, but to invite people in. But even when you do that, you still have a lot of people who for one reason or the other can't get there, can't make it. This is just one more effort to try to get people comfortable with the campus. I've talked to the sheriff's department. They're gonna be very helpful to us that first week of school. They're gonna have lots of different people there to help us and direct traffic, and getting the traffic flow will be critical for West Ridge. And I don't mind telling you all, and I think you all know that that's going to probably be our #1 issue with the opening of our school. Our school is going to be ready. Furniture is probably 50% installed right now in classrooms and other areas. Charlie and I were there this morning. Things are moving. It's amazing how you can be there one day and go back the next and you think, wow, that's a lot that got done. So there's a lot happening. I've tried to send you all a few snippets of information so that you can see what's happening on the athletic field. Our football fields, that's a really special piece for us. And when I say it's for us, it's really for our kids. It's really special. And some of the things that I've already heard our coaches and our players say, I can't wait for you all to talk to them. And you will have that opportunity, because we're going to make sure they have that opportunity to talk to our kids, because that's when you're really going to know that the actions that you have taken and the hard decisions that you've had to make over the course of the 7 to 8 years that this has all been going on, it's becoming a reality, and I'm really proud of the work that's gone on in our school district. So congratulations to you for making those efforts. But it's watching the turf go down at East yesterday and the day before, and watching it at West Ridge. The turf will be finished, they think, next Wednesday at West Ridge. They'll be completely finished, and they're even surfacing the track. It's getting very close. So I think we'll start seeing some activity there as well, but, so, something to smile about. Make sure you smile about it, and I hope that, you know, you get out there and you can be a part of it. I mean, it's just nice to sit there and look at it and think, wow, what our kids are gonna get to experience. So,
Ms.
thank you.
Rafalowski, I wanna go back to, the traffic flow and Westridge and all that.
Yes.
I just want to, remind the board, and Mr. Gilmore, if you'll jump in here. Having been a principal for over 17 years, it doesn't matter. That first week of school, traffic is horrible. It doesn't matter how much information you've put out there and you've told the parents, drive this way, turn right, turn left, let your kid out here. Traffic's going everywhere. So I would just like to remind the board, that's gonna be even harder than a normal school with that normal confusion that always happens that first week of school. Please be patient, please be positive when that week rolls around. As you're getting calls and you're getting emails, assure them that this will work itself out, because I truly believe that it will work itself out. But it will not work itself out day 1, day 2, day 3, and with Westridge, it might even be day 8, 9, or 10, but it will work itself out. But it never failed to amaze me, the confusion that you always had the first few days of school with traffic. So I just ask that the board remember that when your phone starts ringing and your email starts flying. Give the administration at the school time to work it out. It will work itself out, and it will flow. They'll find the flow and it will work out.
Thank you, Dr. Rouse, for that, and that's very true. It doesn't matter if it's been a school in existence for 30 years. That first week of school is always a lot of traffic.
I'd like to add a little bit about the turf. I went out to East yesterday, and I've made several trips since the project began, and I went by about 6:30 or 7 yesterday afternoon, and I was there until 9:30. I bet everybody I ran into, you have never seen a happier bunch of people. I had to walk up and around to get down on the field, and everybody was wondering how I got in there, because they were hanging on the fence. Everybody wanted to get in and get close to it. And I spent more time in the end zone yesterday than I ever did when I played. But I'll tell you, what I wouldn't give to be able to be there and be part of that. The football coach stopped and talked to me a little bit, and I think Ms. Rafalowski said it correctly. We're about to see some dividends from tough decisions, including what we can, we can provide for our students and what we can pay our people. And a couple people brought that up too while I was there. I just can't wait to see that happen, because we have people been in the system working for us for 26, 27 years that when they saw the pay schedule, they called me and they said, "Is this real? Is it possible?" And so it's going to be a good time for our people, and it's been a long time coming. And I wish my wife had longer to work so she could benefit from it. But it's going to be a good time for our people in the next couple of years. And I don't know how I'm going to be at 2 football games at once. So I hope that Westridge and East on that first. I hope the first week. I haven't looked at the schedule. I hope they play on different nights the first week. But
I don't know if they do or not.
I can tell you
I'll have
this.
to check that out, but.
I'll be at those games.
What I would say is, as I close with this, remember this is a draft. If you have concerns or questions, if you'll send me an email, I'll be happy to answer those, look into it. I will be sending this out to our principals tomorrow for their eyes. I wanted yours to see it first, to get their input, but I do look for this to be an action item, June 8th. Any other questions for me?
Yeah, I guess, I like the staggered days at the high school. I think that is a very good idea. I guess what worries me was, like, we got the Sullivan Heights at 2:45 getting out, and then the Westridge at 3. I know there's a lot of parents that'll have a kid in 8th grade and a freshman at the high school. I don't think you can get there in 15 minutes, but I don't really know what we can do unless we extend our into daytimes till 5 o'clock in the evening. So I really don't know what's best. I mean, I don't. It just worries me, and even me looking at the Westridge getting out at 3, and then the Catron at 3:30 for my kids. That's going to be tight. But I don't know what we can do. I don't. But I can say this: me as a parent, my kids will not be on the bus going to Westridge because I won't put them on a bus that long. That's my personal thing. I mean, it's just me to my kids, but that worries me. But I don't really know how you fix it. I don't.
And what I would say is Westridge dismisses at 3, but that doesn't mean that students have to leave at 3. There will be some time where they have a commons that they'll be able to utilize. But, you know, we have students on our high school campuses after school is out for several hours. And so, you know, if a parent gets there at 3:15 or even 3:30, I think it's going to work. And again, at the beginning, it's going to be just a little bit better that everybody's not sitting there at 3 o'clock or 2:45 or whatever. So having a little bit of a stagger there will help. But again, we'll take care of our kids. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rafalowski, and thanks to the members of the lead team who worked on this with you. Y'all have done a really great job here. Okay, our final item, I'm going to turn back over to Mr. Hull to speak to the issue of employee dismissal.
Hey, thank you. I'm going to give you a couple of handouts. And just take one and pass it on. This is relative to this item that will be on the agenda. This is a copy of the Tennessee Code section that we'll be dealing with at the June 8th meeting. So the law there that where I underline says when charges are made to the Board of Education against a teacher, charging the teacher with offenses that would justify dismissal of the teacher under the terms of this policy, the charges shall be made in writing. And we've done that. I'm going to give you another copy of those here in just a minute. Specifically stating the offenses that are charged and shall be signed by the party or parties making the charges. That, of course, again, has been done, and we'll give that to you. The next section goes on to say, if in the opinion of the board, charges are of such a nature as to warrant the dismissal of the teacher, the director of schools shall give the teacher a written notice of this decision, together with a copy of the charges. Now, so that's what we'll be taking up at this meeting is, if in the opinion of the board, charges are of such a nature as to warrant dismissal. So that doesn't mean if you have thought it through, reasoned it through, thought of both sides, it's simply is you look at the charges, and I'm going to hand you a written copy here for your benefit. If the board votes then that if that were true as charged, that is it warrants dismissal. Then after that there is a hearing process. The employee has full opportunity to present their side. Both sides would be presented at the hearing, not before the board. And so this is just a preliminary step, and I was thinking about this. I suspect that at some point in the past, it may have happened more than once, that they went all the way through the process, and then it came back to the board, and the board said, well, we would have never even done this if it had been our choice, you know. So I think the idea is to approve, if you will, the charges. Okay, does that make sense? So it's not gonna be a time where there's any argument or testimony or anything else. You, of course, can have your discussion at the meeting and ask questions, get clarification, read those through. But at this upcoming board meeting, it isn't a hearing, and there won't be a final decision made about dismissal or not dismissal. It's strictly what we generally call an approval of the charges. Now, does anybody have a question about that? So it shouldn't be a long process, but that depends on your how long it takes the board to make that decision. And I wanted to say another word, and we've discussed this, and I know you've gotten this in your TBA training, but I'll just back up a second, and Mr. Spivey may want to chime in here, but one of the principles, and this is a little bit counterintuitive here, but one of the principles of hearings and trials is that whoever's making the decision, make their decision based on what's presented to them at the hearing or the trial. So, I don't know that this happens anymore, but it has, you know, in the distant past, like juries would go out and look at the accident scene, or go down to the junkyard and look at the car, or go talk to people. And so the courts have been very strict to say, we just want your decision made on what happens at the trial. For one reason, you know, someone could come on information that's not admissible. So the point of that being is it's important for you to be able to do that, which means not to engage in discussion. You know, I know that there's certainly a temptation when people send you emails or call you or something to engage them in discussion. But I'd really think it would be best for you to avoid that. It's a matter that's coming before a hearing. It's not fair, really, to anybody in the process if you're, you know, if your neighbor is saying, well, let me tell you something that you know, ought to know. So if you can refrain from that, that would be advisable. That's, you know, assuming the charges are approved. Obviously, if you vote against that, then that would be the end of it. But otherwise, it'll proceed along. There will be a hearing. There's an administrative judge that conducts that. It could come back to you again later as an appeal. So still yet, you want to keep yourselves out of that. And obviously, I warned you previously, probably on numerous occasions, but don't engage in deliberation about it outside the meeting. So that's always the case because of the sunshine law. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Chairman, there? Did I hit on that okay?
I think so, and unfortunately, that does still happen. It's happened to me in a jury trial when a vehicular homicide that takes a week, and, you know, a tragedy for all the parties involved, and somebody goes out and drives the route and then comes and tells the jurors, like, I think that person's lying, because I did the same thing last night. And what happens is the whole trial is for naught, and you have to do it all over again, and that's happened to me. So it is a little counterintuitive, but it really is just, it should just be what we hear and what's presented in front of us on that issue at the time, not what our neighbor said or a constituent's concern. I mean, obviously you take into consideration your personal views and concerns, but we're supposed to follow the proper policy and just hear what comes before us.
Mr.
Okay,
Hall,
thanks. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. The hearing with the impartial officer, is that a public hearing, or, and if so, if it is a public hearing, should the board refrain from seeing that portion as well?
I think it is a public hearing. Be honest, it's been so long since I did one, but I think it is. Yes, the board should refrain from attending that, would be my recommendation. And I think it is, I've been involved in some and nobody ever showed up, so it wasn't an issue, but you just need to make sure, and it's, obviously it's a matter of fairness, that we want to provide a fair hearing for everybody involved.
So you're saying even the information that comes out of that hearing, we should not, you know, whether it would be in the media or anywhere, we should.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, I guess ideally, I would say yes. I think it's a little bit unrealistic to say you're not going to get your newspaper and open it up and there it is. But I would refrain from going and talking to somebody that testified and say, well, what happened? What did you say? What did they say? Yeah, I think that kind of interference would not be a good idea.
So let's move forward to the appeal. If it comes back to the board in the form of an appeal, who presents both cases to us? And in that meeting, then we just make our decision based on whatever we hear that time.
That's right. That's right. Whatever comes to you in the appeal is what you would consider.
And who does that? Who presents both?
There's a procedure to have an attorney who presents the case to the board. And then, of course, the teacher is entitled to an attorney, and so that generally is what would happen. I will be there as your advisor, okay? So I can't play both parts. So I'll be the board's attorney, but not the person presenting the charges.
But in fact, the case we hear at appeal would be very similar to what is heard by the independent officer?
You will get a transcript of exactly what's said. And, I think for the most part, that's what you're going to consider. Obviously, in the appeal, there can be attorney argument and that kind of thing. But yeah, you're going to get all of that information. You'd see all the documentation. You would actually have the transcript of that.
I've studied the law a little bit, but I have one more question. Is either party at the appeals part of the process able to bring in new or additional information outside of what was heard with the officer?
You know, I don't know that right now, to be honest. I don't know that.
I'm not gonna throw it out there because I don't wanna taint whatever you may find out. I think I know the answer, I just wanted to kinda see if I hear what I
Yeah,
heard.
well, it's probably in this statute, and I just sort of, zeroed, well, I don't guess it's in this one, but, you know, I'm not sure.
We got time,
Yeah, we'll get prepared for that.
Would, I want to make, Mr. Hull, would it be fair to say that the initial, on June the 8th, that's more analogous to should charges move forward, more like a grand jury kind of proceeding of should this move forward if true?
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy. I sort of shy away myself from using that, but yes, it is an analogous situation. You know, there's nothing criminal involved,
Right,
so
obviously.
I'm sort of hesitant to say that, but yes, it is a decision should this move forward.
Right, I guess a better way of saying it would be, you're not necessarily making a fact-finding determination yourself as a board. You're just saying if this is true as stated, does that warrant moving forward as you've recommended as the
Right.
director?
That's right, that's well said. And I suppose you could, and I think this would be the way it would work, you could have boards, board members in these kinds of matters that saw the charges and said, well, if this person's guilty of every one of them, I don't think they ought to be dismissed. So at that point, then that one would stop right there. But assuming that the board concluded, and the board would vote on that it should proceed, then it would move on from there.
A simple majority of the board.
Yes.
And just so I understand as well, because I haven't studied any of these statutes, on June the 8th, is it solely just the presentation of the charges by Dr. Cox, or do we hear anything else?
I think it should just be the presentation of the charges, period.
That's what I thought too. I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, well, thank you very much. If you have a question, feel free to let me know.
Okay, Mr. Spivey, that does conclude the work session agenda. I would just say, is there anything else to be considered this evening, or have any questions?
Not that I can personally think of, unless anybody else has anything. And I'm excited to see the pictures that Evelyn's shared with some of us, and I've seen on Facebook of the new school and every of the improvements at East. And I'd just say it's some people see this and they think, oh, all they're talking about is sports and a football field. No, it's not. It's just the highlight of it, and it's just an example of all the great opportunities that are going to be available, along with Mr. Flannery's presentation that shows how much more we can offer the kids of Sullivan County. So sports are great, but that's not what the board's all about. It's just about these wonderful opportunities. It's just easy to point to that because it's visually easier to see, but I think that what's going on in that building, what will go on in the schools, and especially if we get this, our pay scale approved and our budget approved, that'll be going on in your kids' lives and every opportunity and in their minds. And so I just wanted to highlight that.
Okay, well, I think if there's nothing else, then we're at the end, and just remind everybody again that the next time that we'll meet, according to our schedule, is June the 8th here in this room. The meeting starts at 6:30. And please be here at 5:30 for board pictures. Ms. Grubb will be here to take the pictures. Thank you all very much.